This is HBR News number 506, California Burns, again, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to hell. Honey Badger Radio, I mean. My name is Brian, your host on the HBR News Show. We are here to hopefully give you some kind of entertainment during these dark times so that they don't drive you mad in despair, because that's what they want. So I'm your host, Brian, and I'm joined by, as always, my lovely co-hosts, Hannah and Dr. Randomcam. Welcome to the show. And, well, we're going to get right into it. So on this week's news show, we're going to be discussing the latest Los Angeles riots, like the 2025 riots, basically. A precedent-setting Supreme Court ruling that could only happen because of the conditions of the people involved, most likely. Assassinations and jailing for jokes and more, so stick around, it's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. So you might be aware that Los Angeles is being enriched culturally right now with all kinds of foreign foods. And The Guardian, because I couldn't find much to talk about other than like the new ways that the United Nations women or UN women is like panicking about the red pill getting popular. So this guy named Dave Schilling, though that's his real name, I guess, it's not a joke, has written his own opinion. He's like, look, I get that everything is on fire and your businesses are being destroyed and your dollar's not worth anything, but living in Los Angeles in 2025 is a test of your empathy, and I'm going to help you get through this from my gated community mansion in, like, you know, the upper Palisades that weren't touched by the fires.
This is misinformation, sir. Things are not on fire. Don't believe what you see. People are just happily watching things on fire. That's all it is.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I'm sorry. So lines that divide us can lead to fear and isolation, but as helicopters fly overhead, those lines can also create commonality, comrade. So we'll take a look and see what Mr. Schilling has to say. Ooh, I don't want to assume his gender. What Zier Schilling has to say in the patron show in order for you guys to participate in that show and give us your own commentary, you bigots. Then you have to go to feedthebadger.com/subscribe to become a member. $5 a month will get you into the Discord server where you'll be able to enjoy all of the extra content as well as participate in various community activities. That's feedthebadger.com/subscribe. And if you want to send us a message at any time during the show, then the best way to do so, you could do it through a super chat, you could do it through a Rumble rant, but the best way to do so is to do it through feedthebadger.com/just-the-tip. $5 or whatever you give will, essentially most of it will go to us as opposed to, you know, half of it going to Google. And it is much less likely to get, let's say, repressed or checked for by the fact checkers over at Google and possibly removed. So, you know, if you want to avoid those things, then just go to feedthebadger.com/just-the-tip. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started because we got a lot to get to. So first, let's talk about the peaceful protests going on in Los Angeles. So this is like the big story, so we're going to open up with this one. That way we can get it all out of the way. So on June 6, 2025, protests erupted in Los Angeles after U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that's called ICE, conducted aggressive raids targeting undocumented immigrants or illegal aliens in areas like the Fashion District, Koreatown, and Paramount, arresting over 100 people. The demonstrations, centered around the Metropolitan Detention Center and other federal buildings, escalated over the weekend, with clashes involving rioters throwing rocks, bottles, and Molotov cocktails and setting vehicles, including Waymo robot taxis, on fire. Apparently, they have these robo-taxis that don't have drivers. So in LA, it's such a weird thing because they got all these homeless people and all these drug addicts and all this like poverty, and at the same time, robot cars. It's literally Demolition Man, like in LA. The Los Angeles Police Department declared unlawful assemblies using tear gas, rubber bullets, and flashbang grenades. President Donald Trump deployed 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines to the city, intensifying the conflict. By June 10th, protests had calmed somewhat but spread to other cities, with around 150 arrests reported in Los Angeles over the weekend. California Governor Gavin Newsom and LA Mayor Karen Bass condemned the federal troop deployment, with Newsom filing lawsuits against the Trump administration, calling it an unconstitutional overreach that inflamed tensions. Bass described the city as a tinderbox and criticized the raids for sowing chaos. Yes, that's what it's ICE's fault that there are illegals in LA. ICE and Trump officials, including acting director Marco D. Charles and DHS Security Kristi Noem, defended the operations. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem defended the operations, claiming they targeted criminal illegal immigrants, with ICE aiming for 3,000 daily arrests nationwide. The LAPD reported being overwhelmed, with Chief Jim McDonnell noting the strain on resources. Media coverage was polarized. Outlets like the New York Times and Reuters criticized the federal response as excessive, while conservative voices framed the protests as riots requiring a firm hand. The rule of law. Disinformation on social media, including false claims about planned raids, fueled unrest. Activists and protesters, including union leaders like David Huerta, who was arrested and later released, expressed outrage, viewing the raids as an attack on immigrant communities and the military response as an assault on free speech. Protesters chanted "ICE out of LA" and waved Mexican flags, demanding the release of detainees. Immigrant rights groups like CHIRLA, or CHIRLA, called the raids terrorizing. On X and on the ground, some residents supported the protests, with a viral image of a protester near a burning car, symbolizing resistance. However, Trump supporters and others online argued the protests were violent, justifying federal intervention, and criticized local leaders for enabling lawlessness through sanctuary policies. Some, like House Speaker Mike Johnson, backed Trump's actions as necessary leadership, while others, including local Korean Americans, feared a repeat of past riots.
Why would Koreans be worried?
They're not. They're ready.
You guys know exactly what to do. Just stand on the roof playing Duck Hunt. It's fun. You'll have the time of your lives. If everyone did what roof Koreans do, you wouldn't even need the National Guard. That's what America's all about, isn't it? You should never need the National Guard, because at any given time on any given strip of land, there's supposed to be an American behind every blade of grass with a gun. But at least that's the idea. But California is, it's barely even the USA anymore. It's a one-party anarcho-communist economic zone where American citizens work their asses off so that foreign gangbangers can freeload off them forever. I keep seeing tweets and general comments along the lines of, "Lol, leftist logic. They're flying Mexican flags, but they don't want to be sent back to Mexico. What gives? Make it make sense, herder." Like, are you all playing dumb? Are you cleverly leading us down the garden path towards the obvious answer, or are you really that dumb? It's because they are invaders. That's how it makes sense, because they are colonizing your country. They are trying to manifest destiny through the current borders of their own country. It's not leftist logic, it's invasion logic. They're not leftists. You won't see a leftist flying the flag of their own country. You'll see them burning it while they fly any other flag. Mexicans flying Mexican flags are highly patriotic, nationalistic even. They are right-wing with regard to their own country. And they want nothing less than the abject destruction of the USA. It just so happens that these priorities overlap and align perfectly with American leftists. We have a similar issue in the UK and in Europe in general. As far as the government is concerned, the number one threat is right-wing extremists, cultural nationalists, as has recently been described. People who think their own culture and their own race is superior to other cultures and races. Oh, hey, that's a perfect description of the hordes of Pakistanis who wave Pakistani flags from their Pakistani enclaves, declaring, in 20 years, this country will be Pakistani, bruh. We're going to outbreed you. We're going to take over. And then we're going to get the rugged rubber thingy rapids, bruh. If British people went to another country and said that shit, they would be called far right in the extreme. But when foreigners come to Britain and do that shit on behalf of their own country, they magically do not fall under the umbrella of far right. The umbrella of far right that the government is promising to crack down on. Because it's not the far right they're cracking down on, it's just British people. Any British people who show any signs of favouring or prioritising the British people. And for all this talk of fascism, about smashing the fascists, for some reason Antifa seems to have no problem with Islam. The leftists who scream fascism at everything they don't like don't have a problem with Islam. They don't seem to have noticed that there is no system currently in this world that is less fascist than Islam. Islam itself is codified not just as a religion, but as a legal system that demands coordination between government and private companies. So much so that there's not a square inch of the country that isn't under the death grip of this totalitarian dogma. But leftists don't give a shit, because that's not what they mean by fascism. What they mean by fascism is any person of North European origin defending themselves or defending their people or defending the countries they have built. These people are communists, globo homo communists. They want nations destroyed and they want families destroyed. And they are starting with their own. Here in the West, this is the biggest problem we've faced over the last 50 years. And it's these domestic communist revolutionaries who have deliberately held the gates open for the barbarians. And now we have another problem. The foreign mercenaries who have been weaponized by the domestic communists. In the case of the USA, it's mostly Mexicans and other Central Americans. In the case of Europe, it's, well, everyone, really. There's no country in the world whose wastrels and ne'er-do-wells our governments will not welcome. But when you tally everything up, it tends to be the kebabs who do most of the terrorism.
Mike, we're getting a little static on your microphone.
Oh, no. Are you still getting it?
Yeah.
Hang on,
there. Oh, there you go. Okay, now it's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, please don't get tunnel visioned into forgetting the existence of either side of this pincer movement. Foreign nationals have always been a threat. Domestic anti-nationals are a relatively recent sort of autoimmune disease that allowed these foreign bodies to infect our once thriving populations. And now both of these parasites are sucking us dry, one from the top down and one from the bottom up, and they are using each other synergistically to speedrun the whole process. In summary, your enemy is not just the left. It's the left from within and the right from without. There are two wolves, but only one of them is inside you. We're fighting a war on two fronts, whether we like it or not. So when you stand on the roof of your Korean bodega, you're going to need two guns. But that's twice the fun. So, yeah, have a good time with it. And don't let the bastards grind you down and so on and so forth.
I want to add to this as well that there are definitely Mexican, let's say, invaders that are waving Mexican flags, but there were also And I thought it was weird, but there's definitely photos of Mexican, Palestinian, African, and communist flags in the crowd. And some of those flags are shockingly brand new, like they were just purchased or given away and unfolded and used. And a lot of the immigrants are holding, they or at least the people protesting may not speak English, but they're holding signs that are professionally printed out in perfect legible English, and they all seem to have similar messages. And I think that's a bit strange. And I think that ultimately these riots are just so like there was a video I saw that I thought was kind of interesting. There was an internal memo that was leaked from Starbucks, and it was right before Pride Month. And they said in the according to the guy who was talking about the memo, that there was the memo said that we're not doing Pride Month this year. We're not going to be making that a central part of our messaging. We're instead going to focus on immigration. That's the new purse puppy. That's the new central theme. And of course, this is in preparation for what we Americans voted for in terms of doing something about our southern border. And I think that what we're seeing is mostly manufactured, but a lot of useful idiots participating. And I have here a clip of a man who entered the United States illegally, and he's protesting ICE, and they're asking him, what is it he's doing here? So I thought you guys would like to see this. I'm going to show this video to you real quick.
We don't agree with the term illegal. We're undocumented. We've been here for thousands of years before you guys showed up, screw up everything. We think we should organize together with the U.S. working class and fight together and create a better system. We're anti-capitalist. We think socialism does work, real socialism, not Venezuela, not Cuba, not any of that crap that they try to sell us as socialism. And we believe it would be a more humane system that will take care of most of all people's necessities.
Is there a country we can look to kind of model the socialism idea?
The only model would be Soviet Union the first 4 years. After that, it became a mess. Sadly, there was a bureaucrat leadership that grew out of that, but it has to do mainly with the attacks of the U.S. and all big.
Like what? Why are there like these? There are different flags here. Just like they got Pan-African, they got Palestine, they got Mexico, they got this one. I think this is Venezuela or something. Notice that you can still see the creases in these flags too. Like they're brand new. Okay. And
I know a lot of people are assuming that these are paid mobs, that they've been funded by some kind of Soros character, and yeah, that might be possible. But yeah, let's consider the idea that some of these people are just ready to go anyway.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I think it's
there's
why
another
would you
aspect to this.
wait, why would you, there's like people that you would have to pay, but there's a lot of people that if you don't have to pay them and you can get them riled up and get them to do this for you, and they're just looking to like blow shit up, they just
the
want to
media's
burn
already
everything
done
down
that.
anyway.
The media's already primed.
So you don't have to pay those people. You can just let them go because they're just willing to do it. So yeah.
Here's what a lot of people don't understand. All right, there are still hundreds of thousands of people in the world who maybe millions, billions, who are dumb enough to fall for mainstream establishment bullshit. Like, just because there's a big set of us that have seen through all the psyops, that recognize, when you're being manipulated, that something looks a little bit too novel, a little bit too sudden, a little bit too patterned, or a little bit too much of an emotional appeal, a little too perfect to be natural, to be occurring naturally, organic. That doesn't necessarily mean that a huge portion of the population will not fall for it anyway. Right? That people who stormed Walmart to buy all of the toilet paper, who fist fought each other in the aisles and actually ripped toilet paper packets out of little old ladies' hands because they were in a panic, lived through years and years of the Vietnam protests, the gang protests over the years, the gang violence in their neighborhood, the influx of drugs into their neighborhoods. They lived through being manipulated into the weapons of mass destruction and and supporting military action overseas over and over again. They believed every news story that came along before that. And then when those news stories were no longer useful and the media came out and said, oh, by the way, that all stuff, they all lied to you. Okay. But this time, after decades of lying to you, this time we're telling the truth. This time you can trust us. And there are in your community, at least half of your neighbors are dumb enough to believe that. All right. This isn't people who, in these protests necessarily, this isn't people who are so passionate about the situation or what they're being told is happening or what the psyop happens to be in the moment, that they're out there throwing rocks through windows and breaking into stores and looting and setting fires and throwing shit at the cops and all that, because they really give a rat's ass about what's going on right now. All right. This is people that are dumb enough that even if they didn't believe in any of that 5 minutes ago, the people that talk to them, the people that they associate themselves with, can rope them into it with just a few statements because they are that stupid. And the sad thing is, it's always been that way, and it will always be that way. And I really hate to say this. I really hate to sound snobby like this, but the bottom half of the intellectually capable part of the population will never do better than this. They're never going to not do this. And so the top half needs to stop being patient with them. Right there, we need to stop coddling them. We need to stop saying, well, they got roped into it. They got tricked into it. They didn't understand it was a psyop. They bought into this. They're being paid to this, to that. No, there's a shitload of them that are rioting because they can get away with it.
Absolutely.
There's a shitload of them that are rioting because they grew up getting told that they're the victims of everybody else's success. They don't give a rat's ass about ICE. They don't give a rat's ass about Mexican people. They don't care who's getting deported. They don't care who's coming into the country. They care about whether or not they can get a free pair of sneakers out of it. And I'm not talking about any particular skin color either, because this is something that, like I said, the bottom half of the intellectually capable part of humanity, that includes a hell of a lot of people, and it includes all races. Right? It is time to get behind the idea of just, if you get caught participating in a riot, you get arrested, you get tried, and you get the penalty for participating in a riot. And it doesn't matter if you actually made it out of the store with the sneakers or not. It doesn't matter if you threw the rocks or not. If you were in that crowd, if you were running around with those people, especially if you came there from out of state, it doesn't matter if you drove yourself there or if you accepted a free ticket from some open society funded organization. You knew what was going to happen. You went there to do that, and you did it. Right? And I don't care about people's sob stories anymore when it comes to this, because it's bullshit. And as far as I'm concerned, they showed us on the so-called left, which is really just the authoritarian side, and it's not the left. Republicans were involved too, so I don't want to hear any more left-right bullshit when it comes to this. Right? The authoritarian state showed us when the establishment is not behind a protest, when the establishment does not support what the protesters are doing, with J6, they showed us what they do to those protesters. So anytime there is a riot and they don't do that, that should tell you this is orchestrated. The people involved are criminals. The people who funded the bus tickets to get people from other states to this location, the people who transported, the drivers of those buses, if they knew they were taking people to a protest, everyone involved has broken the law. They have participated in a riot, or they have conspired to create a riot. And that needs to be accounted for. Until there is accountability for that, this will continue. This has been going on longer than most of Gen X has been alive. In fact, I think longer than all of Gen X has been alive. We shouldn't have any tolerance for it. Our kids shouldn't have any tolerance for it. Our grandkids shouldn't have any tolerance for it. This needs to end. People are losing everything. They're losing their businesses. They're losing their homes. They're losing their lives. When this type of violence is allowed, and this is just unaddressed, and it's treated like it's the same thing as people walking down the street peacefully carrying a bunch of signs and saying, this is what we believe and we want you to hear us, and then going home, we lose our country. We lose our civilization. It is bullshit to treat this like it is nothing else. And that lie, to just allow that lie to stand and fall for it, is the dumbest thing you can do right now. So I don't, like I said, I don't care if the people involved fully understand what they're supporting or why they're doing what they're doing. They know it's illegal to throw a brick through somebody's window and run in and steal their merchandise or attack the police or set fire to things that are not theirs, or in public places or in places where you're not supposed to set fires because it's dangerous. They know that they are breaking laws. They know that they are attacking their own community, or they have traveled there to attack somebody else's community. And they need to be able to account. And it should not stop with them. They should be made to testify. Where did you get the bus ticket? Where did you get the rocks? Who talked you into this if you don't think that you're responsible? What organization do you belong to? Who's in charge of it? And then that needs to be followed up with investigations and prosecutions of those organizations. That's the only way to put a stop to this, is to recognize that this is not social unrest. This is an act of war against one's own country, and it needs to be treated as such.
Okay. So I think the purpose of these things is to demoralize people, and it's working. And so what I'm saying is that yes, there are people who act because they find opportunities to do that. And of course, they're going to take advantage of it. And one of the reasons is because they are demoralized. They don't think that they have the ability to get things unless they steal it. They can't find any solace unless they burn everything down. That's what people who have nothing to lose do. And what these, like, I guess you could say, instigators in government, in the media, and so on do is they lie and lie and lie until they get people motivated enough to go out and burn everything down. It happened to me in 2020 when the Black Lives Matter riots were happening in Chicago. I had to flee the city. They took my life from me. I could never go back, and my city will never be the same after that. I put the blame fully on those who ultimately did the damage, physically did the damage, but also it goes to everyone who was a part of that, everyone who was involved, whether it was people who were paid to instigate and the people who fell for the propaganda, okay? All across the board. My point is that this riot, like the Rodney King riots, like the George Floyd riots, like all the probably riots going all the way back to the assassination of Martin Luther King, every riot was instigated on purpose to demoralize the American people so that you could finally get someone to get some kind of control. And yeah, there's a lot of other reasons why people do it as well. But I think that is what's going on, and that's why I'm asking that people do not allow themselves to be demoralized by this, because this is what they want. They want you to be black-pilled and feel hopeless so that you can turn to someone with power that's going to take care of you. They want you to feel like helpless children so they can get daddy government to protect and take care of you. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. And Claudia Sheinbaum, the Mexican president, has threatened to fight back. Claudia Sheinbaum is revealing that Mexico is our enemy. And I mean, it's not that we want it this way, but this is what they've done. They are not taking their own people. Now, of course, this isn't about that. And I have shared some of the imagery that's been going around where the Mexican activists or whatever, the instigators, they're claiming, and I think this is just let's just say, I think that they're just using it as a precedent to be violent. They're claiming that this is their country. They want this back. This is the claim, okay? It might just be an excuse to burn, loot, and steal. But this is what is being used. This is what we are dealing with. So I think that it behooves us to understand why this is going on and all of the various reasons why. There was a riot in LA 1992, 2013 riot in LA, 2020 riot in LA, 2025 riot in LA. And why? Because Gavin Newsom or whoever's running the shit, they allow it to happen. And remember, when the riots were going on in 2020, Trump said, because he was president at the time, he was like, well, if they want, I'll deploy the National Guard. And all the people that are running the main cities, Chicago, New York, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, Minneapolis, they were all like, no, we're not doing that. That's fascism. We're not letting you do that. And what happened? Those cities were fucking destroyed. And now Trump is like, well, I'm just going to do it. And of course, they're calling him a fascist. Exactly what they said they were going to do. And people are falling for it. And so, we have to live in a country of laws. It just has to be. So this has to be dealt with. But it's also helpful for us to understand all the various factors that have come together to create this situation. Okay? Everyone's looking for a piece of the United States. That's what it's not about wanting to live here. It's about wanting the country for themselves. And so we get it from Mexico, and we get it from Canada, and we get it from Europe, and we get it from the UK, and we get it from South America. We could get it from Australia if they were close enough. And so we have to say no. We're working on our shit right now, okay? And I think that's what it is. We just have to stay vigilant, stay frosty. Don't let them emotionally crush you, because that's what they want. They want you to give up. They want you to feel like a piece of shit. They want you to hate yourself more than you might already hate yourself. And I say no, okay? And of course, Gavin Newsom is making statements like, I have formally requested the Trump administration rescind their unlawful deployment of troops in LA County and return them to my command. We didn't have a problem until Trump got involved. That's a bullshit lie, by the way. Because they already had millions of illegals, millions, right? But they wanted to pretend
California
they weren't.
Had a problem for 40 years.
Yeah, but he's like, no, you made it a problem. When it's like somebody, again, this is exactly what I mean when I say it's like somebody finally fights back against the bully, and then the person who fights back is the one that's the bad guy. That's what this is, okay? We didn't. So then he says, rescind the order, return control to California. And of course, this is all about narrative framing. This is all about creating a framework of, oh, the big bad orange man is trying to get rid of the poor, the separating women from their kids or some bullshit narrative. No, there are people here illegally. Nobody has a right to be here if they're not legal citizens. My wife and I are still going through the paperwork of immigrating her. I am more than happy to do it legally. And if I didn't, if for whatever reason I got lazy or complacent and I said, I'm not gonna do the paperwork, and then ICE came and took her away, I have nobody to blame but myself. Nobody. So this is what I'm saying. These people, they have become complacent. They are here illegally. They know they're here illegally. They don't care. And so they're just staying here. So they got to go. And Gavin Newsom and all these other people, this is not about the people even. This is about their hold on the narrative. That's all that matters. So anyway, and of course he got ratioed in the comments. People are showing video clips of the riots. They are riots. They are violent. They are destructive. And California is not in good shape already after all of the terrible, like, the way that it was governed, you know? So, once again, you know, I ask, what do you think about statism? Like, why do you depend on that shit? You know, grow your own garden. Anyway, so that's all I wanted to say about that. What? Go ahead.
A really simple way for people to understand the difference between something like this and a peaceful protest, all right? Peaceful protesters do not deliberately destroy any property around where they're protesting by any means. They do not deliberately trespass outside of the legally designated protest area. They might do sit-ins at best, where they sit down and they don't do anything. Maybe they sing, but they don't actually throw things at people. They don't set things on fire. They don't tear up fences or break windows. They don't steal things from the location where they are protesting. Right? If they are peaceful, if they are totally peaceful, the place may have trash that it didn't have when they leave, but that's it. The worst thing that peaceful protesters do is litter, right? Maybe trample some grass. If they've done something worse than that, they were not peaceful.
Yep. Well, anyway, let us know what you guys think about this thing in the comments. And I'm gonna get into the next story. You might notice a theme today on the show because I have related stories. So we're gonna move on to the next one. I thought this one was really interesting as well. So here we have Colombia. So on June 7th, 2025, Colombian senator and presidential hopeful Miguel Uribe Turbay, 39, was shot during a campaign rally in Bogota Fontibon neighborhood while addressing supporters. And there's video of him getting shot while he was giving a speech, which I could show you, but I don't think YouTube would like it. So I would say go to my X account, and I have reposted it there so you could see it if you want to. It's not super violent, but definitely he gets shot in the head. While addressing supporters, Uribe was struck multiple times, including in the head and thigh, by a 15-year-old assailant armed with a 9mm Glock pistol legally purchased in the U.S. in 2020. The attack captured on video...
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Isn't it weird? The attack captured on video caused panic among the crowd, and Uribe was airlifted to the Santa Fe Foundation Hospital, where he underwent emergency surgery but remains in critical condition with little response to treatment. A 15-year-old suspect was arrested at the scene, reportedly claiming he acted, quote, for money for my family, end quote, and authorities are investigating potential masterminds behind the attack, offering a $730 reward for information. The incident, the first high-profile assassination attempt on a Colombian politician in decades, has reignited fears of the country's violent past, recalling the assassinations of presidential candidates in the 1980s and 90s. President Gustavo Petro condemned the attack, vowing to investigate security failures, including a reported, by the way, this guy was his competition, just saying, Uribe, a conservative from the Centro Democrático Party and a critic of Petro's leftist government, comes from a prominent political family. His mother, journalist Diana Turbay, was killed in 1991 by Pablo Escobar's cartel. The shooting has drawn widespread condemnation from Colombian leaders, including four former presidents and international figures like U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, amid heightened political tensions ahead of the 2026 election. And his party is it is called the it's called the Democrat Party, but it's basically a center-right party in terms of where it falls politically, according to what I looked up. So he was basically the opposition party to the current establishment.
It was the right-wing candidate.
Yeah, he was the right-wing candidate.
With all of this talk of black fatigue that came about last month over a minor cod shit story about a mother at a playground saying the N-word, I have to worry when the world is going to at least entertain the idea of leftist fatigue. I would call it oikophobe fatigue, but people are still refusing to call it what it is. So fine, I'll use the popular euphemism for the sake of convenience. But given the frequency with which right-wing political candidates across the world get shot or attacked or arrested on trumped-up charges or ousted for being too right-wing, or in the event that they actually win an election, a bunch of judges in the country in question decide to just go, nope, we have declared that you didn't win, and then they ban that right-wing candidate from ever running for office again. Like, at what point does anyone get fatigued at the evident realization that the left doesn't play fair? And there's no reason to play fair with them. I'm not talking about assassinating anyone. I will be arrested if I commit any of these speech crimes that the left gets away with on a regular basis. And it's tempting to full-throatedly declare that these people are inhuman cockroaches and they should not be treated like humans. But anyone who's in touch with their extended family faces the predicament that many members of their family fall into this camp because they get all their information from the legacy media. They can't be reasoned out of this dogma, not even by the people they ostensibly love, because they cannot and will not ever trust anyone as much as they trust the legacy media, having been sat in front of it like zombies for a lifetime. And if we allow our families to become estranged over political matters, then the commies have already won, because that's exactly what they want, to tear families apart. Once they've done that, it will be child's play to tear nations apart. But seriously, if anyone out there is in a political position where they have the choice between arguing diplomatically with these globo-communist parasites or just going, fuck you, we don't care what you think, you are a bunch of apocalyptic demons and you can go fuck yourself. Like, is there any reason remaining not to go with option number 2? Once somebody stand up in the Senate or in the House of Commons, wherever you are, and say, just like I don't care what Nazis think, I don't care what communists think. You are all a bunch of sneaky, reality-bending fuckheads who would rather murder your adversaries than listen to what they have to say. So why the fuck would I listen to what you have to say? You've already declared war on us, so I hereby declare war on you. But we can't sink to their level, bro. We can't use the same tribal tactics as them. Yes, we can. When they are murdering us and arresting us and upending the system that's supposed to freely and fairly elect people, they are going to win. They are going to turn everything into a one world government, and that one world government will be a communist nightmare from which no one can escape. This is an emergency, people. They are killing us. Oh, but that's what they're saying. They're saying we're killing them. Yes, but they're lying. We are not lying. We both claim to have the truth on our side. So let's have it out on platforms where these things can be ascertained. We live in a thin window of history where information can actually be ascertained without the top-down filter. And we don't have much time before the commies have taken control of AI and they can program it to lie to everyone. So yeah, in summary, do not treat these people like human beings. And again, I'm like, don't kill them, don't hurt them, don't use violence. But at the same time, don't for a moment hamper yourself by talking to them as though they are reasonable, honest agents of their own destiny. They are not. They are captured robots of the globo-communist revolution. They don't feel pain. They don't feel pity or remorse. And they absolutely will not stop until you are dead. Do to them what you would do to your pet dog. That's what I'm saying. Discipline it. Go psst on its shoulder. Don't reward it until it knows its place. Let it know that it is not in charge. You are. Because by all accounts, you fucking should be. And if you have to, cut its fucking balls off while you still can. Because if you don't, it will bite your balls off. I'm not being mean to dogs, by the way. This is just a metaphor at this point. Communists are far worse than dogs. I don't know why you would choose to live with communists in the first place.
They're not even cute and fuzzy.
No.
They're really not. You know, honestly, if people are not motivated enough by what we've seen so far, like, you got to consider the reason the United States is such a violent place is because shit like this is allowed to continue. Okay. There is research. There's quite a bit actually showing that having an adverse child experiences are defined as potentially traumatic events that happen during your childhood that can have a lasting impact on the child's development and health. And it usually involves violence, abuse, neglect, or household dysfunction that's particularly bad. And so if you grow up in a neighborhood where there is regular gang violence or high crime, you're included in this, right? About 61% of the general population has experienced at least one of these, but among individuals in prison, it's 91%, right? And the Bureau of Justice Statistics found a significantly higher rate of having experienced violence during childhood or some other childhood adverse experience than among the general population, among violent offenders. So people who actually held a gun on somebody or raped somebody or broke into somebody's house and attempted to kill them. Anybody engaged in any kind of gang violence, anybody engaged in any kind of interpersonal violence, right? And these rioters, a significant number of them probably have also had these types of experiences during their childhood. They're programmed. They're not making intelligent decisions. They are acting on programming. And because it has been communicated to them by the establishment over and over and over again, you can get away with this. You can take your rage and anger and pain out on the rest of society, on people who did nothing to you, that we're blaming for your situation, even though they weren't involved in it, and we will do nothing about it, right? That is what has been told to these people. They're not your average person. Like I said, this is your below average person. The people that you see engaging in this behavior need intervention. And it should. We're done with the carrot. It needs to come in the form of a stick.
All right. I got a super chat or a rumble rant and a super chow I should read. But I just wanted to say that, you know, I always wondered, like, I did ask myself, like, why is it like South America's always going through it? Like, they're just constantly dealing with assassinations and like hostile takeovers. And yeah, there's like cartels and all that. But could it have something to do with the fact that there's so many Nazis and communists that fled after World War II into South America, and they just started like taking root there and teaching there? And you know, I wonder about that. But maybe you guys can like give me some insight into that in the comment section in the chat. Okay, so Blave Kaiser sent us a Rumble rant for $5 earlier, and he said, "Hey Badgers, wonder if you guys are keeping up with the Diddy case. I saw an article that implied that his mother abused him. She had nude drug-fueled parties when he was young." Well, that tracks.
Well, I just kind of answered this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boom.
I will definitely, like, when we have something concrete, I definitely will be following back on the Diddy case. But right now, there seems to be a lot of speculation on it. But like I said, for so many other cases in the past, innocent until proven guilty. I still stand by that, because it's funny how usually when the media wants you to believe something, you should be very suspicious right off the bat, even if the person that they're accusing is somebody you don't like. Actually, especially if it's somebody you don't like, because you're primed to essentially find them guilty before the trial has gone through.
The stuff that's come out about that, though, does track with his mother having that kind of behavior when he was growing up, because it has been proved that he had drug-fueled parties. Right? It has been proved that there was contracting with sex workers and that kind of thing. It has been proved that there was violence in his home, and that's all cyclical. The rest of the stuff we don't know yet. That's all speculation, but the testimony that's been made public so far, it does track. A guy that's raised that way either has to have had some sort of intervention when he was young to stop him from continuing that cycle, or he will continue that cycle. Unless there is something personally exceptional about him, he will continue that cycle. So that's not shocking information. It should always be shocking information, but knowing what we have learned, what's been confirmed about that, and then the other end of it, he's probably been more vulnerable to the industry because of that. And if you wanted to take this person and change him, it would take significant intervention, and he'd have to understand what consequences he would be facing in order to make him want to change. And this is all over the world, places where there's escalating violence in different countries, like some of the countries in South America, the news stories we're talking about tonight, countries across the sea, places where you have this pattern of violent environments producing exceptionally violent individuals that then make the environment more violent and create entire gangs of violence or cultures of violence in those areas. And then you get more exceptionally violent individuals, like in some South American countries where there are cults that practice I don't know what even to call it. It's beyond human sacrifice, because it involves extreme torture and stuff like that you can't even talk about it on social media, and because it's too violent to describe. That the term live vivisection doesn't even do it justice. Right? The level of brutality that these people have engaged in some areas, that's not something that, like one day everybody lives in Pleasantville and the next day somebody does that. Right? This stuff evolves out of existing cultures of violence and an existing tolerance for violence. And the people that get involved with it, the people who do these things, develop mentalities that you can't just say, that's really dumb. You could be living this way and it would be so much better and so much more peaceful, and convince them to stop. Even if you could prove to them that it was true, you couldn't convince them that way to stop. You would have to make them afraid of some consequence of continuing in the same direction before they would even be willing to entertain the idea that on the other side of the fence, where nobody is doing this shit, it might actually be a more pleasant place. Right? Because that is all they know. And it's been driven into them and programmed into them. And it's similar. It's a similar type of mindset to where if you have somebody that you rescue from an environment where they have real, genuine food insecurity. They don't know every day that they're going to get something to eat. And if they do get something to eat, they don't know if it's going to be the last thing they ever get to eat. Right? They don't know if they're never going to run across food again. They don't know if they're going to get killed. And you put them into an environment where they know tomorrow is going to happen. They'll hoard food. Even if you don't give them enough to hoard, they'll put themselves on a little bit of a starvation diet to hoard food. And you have to help them through the practice of hoarding food, because it's so programmed that if I know there's going to be a later, I better save some of this for later because I don't know I'm going to have more of this when I need it. All right. Similarly, people who grew up during the Great Depression hoarded money for the same reasons. They didn't know they were going to have that resource later on. And they were so programmed to not use it or to just not think of themselves as having it. There were a lot of the parents, the baby boomers, died with big savings because of that, or died with property because of that. That was more than you would have expected them to have for the situation that they chose to live in their old age. And so when you see stuff like this, the stuff that we're talking about today is all a consequence of previous generations and our generation treating violence as a thing that we just have to live with. This is going to happen everywhere, and we're just going to have to deal with the fact that violence is always going to be a part of humanity. And so we treat it like when our government doesn't do anything, like the government that will come to your house and take all your shit and throw you in jail if you copy too many movies or too much music or say the wrong thing online if you're in the UK or one of the other countries that's under that type of stipulation, that same government will let people come into your neighborhood and burn down your house and kill your pets and steal your stuff and destroy all the places where you shop for food and all your necessities and then leave and do nothing to them. And it was like, well, we can't really do anything about this because there's rules about how they have to handle that. Bullshit. Right? And when we look at any of these new stories, you got to be ready to call bullshit and get fed up and start making noise, right to everybody in government, write to local newspapers, leave comments under news stories, talk about it on social media, talk about it to your friends and neighbors, hold people accountable.
All right, I got a super chow from Meredith G, and she gives us $5 and says, HBR News number 506, isn't it interesting that the female mayor of LA is all for open borders and the female president of Mexico is fully supporting the LA riots because this would help in the strategy to take parts of the US into Mexico? Let's remind ourselves that is how Mexico lost the territory. And remember that these sweatshop workers who are slaves and the illegal construction workers who are slaves are displacing a lot of US minorities who would have worked those jobs. Well, even majorities that would work those jobs. Basically, most of the work that's being taken by low-skilled labor, that is people who are not indigenous to the United States, are not citizens, they're not US citizens, are being taken from working class men, mostly, in the US. Yes, that's right. And of course, women like the president of Mexico and the mayor of LA, they don't care about that because they just want to score points. And Gavin Newsom is basically an androgynous reptile. So I don't even know what he believes. But anyway, and spoiler alert, men are most likely to be displaced. Yes. And then they wonder why men are voting for Trump in such high numbers. They want their jobs and their dignity. And also, yeah, I mean, like, men see whatever work they can do. They don't see it as a clout thing, Like I noticed that, like, just as an aside, like when it comes to like dating, women are always like talking about they want men that make like this much money, 6 figures, high flying job, white collar. They want like the CEOs or the CFO guys. And the overwhelming majority of men, just like everybody else, do working class work. Like they work in factories, they're truck drivers, they work on the roads, whatever. They're doing like lower end stuff because not everybody is a fucking tech genius that works in STEM. Most people just don't. The thing is, though, with men, they have to do something if they're going to attract somebody that could be a mate. Women, they could choose to work or not work. They'll find somebody either way. So people like, the mayor of LA, they don't care about that stuff because they don't see those men. They don't see the working class American male, no matter what race he is. But yes, you're right. Meredith, thank you for pointing that out. Appreciate the super chow and the message.
They don't see either group of men when you think about it.
Yeah, sure.
Here's an example. All right. when I lived at the apartment complex that I was at before, I live where I do now. The owner of the apartment complex hired a crew of illegal aliens from Mexico to do the roofing in that apartment complex. And one of the things that happened while we were there was I saw a guy fall off the roof. Now, we were not in a multi-story apartment complex, right? He fell one story and he still got injured. It did not sound good when he fell. And fortunately for him, he was able to get up and walk away from that, but he didn't look very comfortable walking away from it either. He probably did some damage. Obviously not broken bones, because you can't really get up and walk away with a broken leg. But, well, if he did have something broken, it was a toe or a foot bone. I've known people that have gotten up and walked when they've had a bone, and then you have a lot of bones in your feet. But if he had been an American citizen working for an American-owned company and he was documented and he went to get medical assistance for that, he would have gone through the workman's comp system. He would have been compensated for time off because it would have been a lost time workman's comp incident. This guy, though, he had nobody backing him up. He was pretty much just fucked. If he couldn't go back to work the next day, that was just lost income. Right? Maybe the rest of his crew would help him with food and stuff, but he would not have had any other form of assistance. And it's something that happens with undocumented workers, mostly men, because they're the ones working in more dangerous jobs like that, where they may get injured. And it's likely that his employer was not following policies that have been tried and tested over time to prevent these kinds of injuries from occurring. So you have all of the men who are not getting those jobs that should be the ones getting those jobs because they're getting them legally. And then you have the men who are doing those jobs at a much higher risk level, that some of those men get injured and their whole lives get ruined, and they don't even have the compensation of a workman's comp for that. They just have to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the super chat, Meredith. And let me just turn my camera back on. There's some weird special shit going on in the special chat. People could be asking me about the cross I'm wearing around my neck. It's a Jerusalem cross. It's a Crusader's cross. That's what it is. It's not a fucking iron cross. Don't be ignorant. This is actually the tattoo that Pete Hegseth has. It is a Christian cross, because I am a Christian. There's a fucking icon of Christ right over here. I hope that doesn't trigger you too much. But it's the current year and all that. But anyway, let's move on to the next story. This one is really, really infuriating. So I'm going to be playing this video a little bit sped up, so that you guys can see this without us getting dinged. So let me just turn off my camera here and give you guys a story. So there's a Brazilian comedian named Leo Lins, 42 years old. And he is known for being very controversial. He offends everybody, like what comedians do. And on June 3rd, 2025, he was sentenced by Sao Paulo federal court to 8 years and 3 months in prison for defamation and hate speech stemming from his 2022 stand-up comedy show, which is showing right here, Perturbador, which is, I guess it's Brazilian for disturbing, performed in Curitiba. The routine, which targeted a wide range of groups, including Black people, Indigenous people, the elderly, LGBTQ plus individuals, people with disabilities, Jews, evangelicals, and people with HIV, which basically means everybody, was posted on YouTube, amassing over 3 million views before its court-ordered removal in 2023. Judge Barbara de Lima Isepi ruled that Lins's jokes incited intolerance and violated Brazil's anti-discrimination laws, prioritizing human dignity over absolute free speech. Because nobody has free speech but us. And that's always under attack too, by the way. Linz was also fined 303,600 reais, which is like their Brazilian money, approximately $54,000, for collective moral damages. The case, prosecuted under laws intensified by President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in 2023, has sparked significant controversy in Brazil's ongoing debate over free expression versus hate speech. Linz remains free pending on an appeal, with his legal team denouncing the ruling as a threat to free speech, which Brazil doesn't fucking have, comparing the sentence's severity to punishments for drug trafficking or murder. Prominent comedians like Antonio Tabet and Jonathan Nemer have defended Linz, arguing that jailing someone for jokes is madness and highlighting Brazil's inconsistent legal priorities, where serious crimes often face lighter consequences. Critics, including some ex-users and legal experts like Fabio de Cesnik, support the verdict, citing the harm caused by Linz's remarks and Brazil's strict anti-racism laws in place since the 1950s. That's weird timing. Public sentiment on X is divided, with some decrying censorship and others arguing the jokes fueled harmful radicalization. Because throwing a comedian in jail is not radical. Linz, maintaining his comedic persona is separate from his personal views, plans to appeal and seek legislative support in Brasilia as the case fuels broader discussions about the limits of humor in Brazil.
Oh, good grief. So, in other words, the nation's president, the president of Brazil, is a whiny little bitch who can't take a joke, and so he put a comedian in jail. Great.
Yeah, this isn't just madness, by the way, as described even by his defenders. The idea of charging $54,000 for collective moral damage against no one in particular is not just insane. We have a perfectly applicable word for this, and it's totalitarian. It's when it's not enough to police people's actions to a micromanaged extent. Is when you excessively punish people for offenses against your own imagination. It's when it's not even a punishment, but a sadistic ritual. Nobody lost any money as a result of this comedian's jokes, let alone lost their lives or their livelihoods. This is just the government plowing on in and going, we can imagine a world in which your jokes are unappreciated, and so we're going to bankrupt you and kidnap you for 8 years. I feel like I'm just doing the same rant for a third time now, but this is what it's come to. It's the same story all over the world. Xenophobia is a crime all over the world, unless it's xenophobia against the USA or against any European country, obviously, in which case it's encouraged. The only other country you're allowed to criticize is your own country, because we don't have a word for that, right? There's no such concept as an irrational fear and hatred of your own countrymen. So how could it possibly be a crime? We call it woke or social justice or progressive or politically correct. It depends on the country, of course. If you're in an Asian country or a Middle Eastern country and you criticize your own countrymen, then you won't get away with it because those countries haven't yet been conquered and ransacked by globalist revolutionaries. It just goes to show you, when we say the West, we do indeed include South America, especially the likes of Brazil and Argentina, because they're the two largest, most prosperous countries in that continent. Prosperity seems to be what does it. When a country does well for itself, it inevitably reaches the point where it implodes, and the spoiled rich kids of that nation decide they're living too well. They have no real problems to deal with, so they invent problems. They fabricate problems. Not problems that they have to deal with, obviously. Not problems that might threaten their own decadent way of life. They invent problems that only the solutions to which only affect poor people who are trying to become comedians, poor people who are trying to work their way out of poverty, using their intellectual skills. And we can't have that. We rich kids who have no skills but wish we did can't possibly have that. How dare those infernal counter-revolutionaries pull themselves up by their own bootstraps? We should arrest those smooth-talking bastards who are somehow proud of their culture, the culture that breathed life into them, somehow free of charge. You can't just become talented or skilled through the osmosis of a homegrown culture. It's not possible. We're rich as fuck, and we're somehow still useless parasites. These bastards must be some kind of racists. I don't know much about Brazil, but if you think the gap between the rich and the poor is dynamically pronounced in the UK or the USA, you ain't seen shit until you've seen Brazil. There are obscenely wealthy people in Brazil, and there are obscenely poor people in Brazil. Arguably, that gap is what causes this communist delusion, and it's also caused by this communist delusion. It's a self-perpetuating downward spiral into hell, and we're not far behind. We'll get there soon. At least we would if we weren't replacing our native populations with any sweaty foreigner who feels like glomming onto our goodwill. Same result, I suppose, but with a slightly different color. I hate everything, and I will kill everything. In Minecraft, I mean.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to like scare people in the chat that somebody on somewhere on the internet might do something somehow. All right. I got a super chat from Zeranx for $2. He says, I think Dave Portnoy agrees with the verdict too. Well, there are people who constantly push for limits on free speech. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are Americans that do it. So
I'm going to point something out though, right? Because there's a difference between pushing and I don't know what Portnoy has advocated for, but I noticed that there have been multiple people I've had to argue with on social media who don't know the difference between saying, OP is a faggot and saying, all right, next week we're going to go round up OP and tie him to the back of a truck and drag him down the street on a rope because he's a faggot. Right? Those are two very different behaviors. The first one is just joking around, right? The second one is illegal. And the reason it's illegal isn't because you're calling OP a faggot. It's because you planned a crime. Right? It's still illegal to plan a crime. It's illegal to commit a crime, and it's illegal to plan a crime. Okay, so Night Motorcyclist says Portnoy got pissed off with Jew jokes. So that's another one. There's two different types of people in whether or not they understand what types of speech promote violence. And if it was just people joking around, generally speaking, that doesn't promote violence, right? Generally speaking, even when you make fun of crime or you make fun of groups of people that have been historically targeted with some sort of crime or are for some reason given a bigger share of public empathy in regard to a type of crime that has actually affected many groups of people all over the world, like being targeted for genocide. That's still not necessarily advocating for violence or inciting violence, right? It's when you start leveling blame in all seriousness for all things on this one group of people, and you start talking about violence being justified as a response, even if the individual isn't perpetrating in the moment, even if the individual is just living in your neighborhood. And that has, again, not targeted just Jewish people. That's targeted white people, that's targeted black people, that's targeted mostly men. Very rarely does it target women as a group, but it's targeted people with particular hobbies. It's targeted religious groups. And it's a very different story than, making jokes that stereotype or being an asshole to people verbally or anything like that. It isn't the same as, in all seriousness, saying these people are like this, and it justifies treating them with some sort of aggression. And I don't like seeing people try to exempt a single group from criticism or being the subject of jokes, or having people be an asshole to them just because of who they are, and just because they're famous for being the targets of the first genocide that Americans personally witnessed in the moment as it was happening, like walked in on it, literally walked in on it. That of course it shocked Americans to walk in on that, but it wasn't the first time something like that happened to a group of people, to a population. It hasn't been the last time. And it's not like our country hasn't been the cause of any. We did it in Ukraine to Russian nationals that didn't support Zelensky. So, I honestly, even though I like the guy and I support a lot of things that he said and done, that's not one of them. I don't think he gets it. Like, it's easy to be oversensitive when it's your group, right? It's easy to be oversensitive when you've been raised to believe that that's the biggest victim group in the world too. And a lot of people are like that with regard to Jews, just like they are with regard to women. And it's wrong in both cases. They're just people. They can be good or bad, dumb or smart, nice or mean, deserving or undeserving. But when you treat them like a separate class from all the other people in the world that has to be handled with kid gloves, you're doing everyone a disservice.
All right, we're going to move on to the next story, but let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. Absolutely tragic, though, that this is where we are with free speech in Brazil. But again, I think it's good because you count your blessings. If you live in a freer country than that, just imagine. And the thing is, they always go after the comedians because the comedians are the ones that poke fun at authority. Like the journalists hold them accountable, or at least they're supposed to in theory. The comedians, they poke fun at them. And when you take somebody out, you can have whatever justification you want, but you are ultimately like removing people's ability to like release, at least a little bit of tension, but also laugh at absurdities that are absurd. That's why comedians exist, so, all right. But anyway, last story. So in a 9-0 ruling, the U.S. Supreme Court, and I saw this celebrated on social media, ruled in favor of an Ohio woman who alleged that her former workplace discriminated against her for being straight. The heterosexual woman in question, Marlene Ames, claimed that her former place of work, Ohio's Department of Youth Services, denied her a promotion in favor of a lesbian candidate, and she was eventually demoted only for her former position to be filled by a gay man. Afterwards, she began what was first described as a, quote, reverse discrimination, end quote, lawsuit. Ames faced an uphill battle as prior to this ruling, a plaintiff from a so-called majority background had extra hurdles to clear in proving discrimination, such as proving an employer had a history of discriminating against majority employees. Ames' case succeeded, with Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson writing for the court, quote, we conclude that Title VII does not impose such a heightened standard on majority group plaintiffs. Therefore, the judgment below is vacated and the case is remanded for application of the proper prima facie standard, end quote. And to just to drive it home a little bit more, this was a unanimous decision by the Supreme Court. So that's significant because it's setting precedent that it wasn't even anyone on the Supreme Court did not disagree with this ruling, but And what this means is that there is no such thing as reverse discrimination. That's what they're landing on. There's just discrimination, okay? Which is good. That's good because normally discrimination is talked about in a sort of progressive way where it's like the minority groups are the ones that they're the only groups that can be discriminated against, and majority groups cannot be the victims of discrimination. This flies in the face of that. And I was happy about it, but I had two things to say. Number one, we'll have to see how that plays out in practice, because all this means is that organizations, groups, companies, whatever, that want to discriminate are going to have to be discreet about how they do it, so they can't throw it in people's face because it could become a legal issue. And the other thing I want to say, and I think this is extremely important, this is a case of a woman being a victim, like actually working out in favor of like other majority groups, because if this was a man, that he wouldn't have won this case. Like I'm like it's because it was a woman that was the victim of this that this worked out. So this is like, I guess, beneficial gynocentrism. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that story. So you guys can have the floor now.
So people understand what the ruling was here. What they're saying basically is that if you file a case of discrimination on the basis of being, well, they didn't hire me because I'm black, or they didn't promote me because I'm a woman, they didn't promote me because I'm gay or whatever, you do not have to prove that the company has done this to other people. You only have to prove that the circumstances of your case made it so that you deserved the promotion and they passed you up in favor of somebody else. And the most likely reason why you were passed up, basically the company can't prove that you were a bad worker. The company can't prove that you didn't work well with your colleagues. The company can't prove that you did anything that should have cost you the promotion. And maybe the company had a pattern of promoting your position to the next position or whatever, and they chose to bypass you. Like, that's all you have to prove. But if you allege discrimination because you're male, or because you're white, or because you're straight, or because you're Christian, by the way, you have to prove that the company has done this to other people of your demographic. You have to prove that they're favoring people on the basis of being some minority race, or being female, or being non-Christian, or being not straight, right? So that's basically what that's about. But you're right. A man couldn't have won this case because they wouldn't have had sympathy for him. And a lot of what happens with cases like this relies on whether or not the court has any sympathy for the person going in there. I think that the other thing that probably contributed to this, because federal law has gone back and forth with regard to affirmative action, is whether or not there were federal laws in place that the employer could say, we had to do this because, right? Because there have in the past, and there are still in place under some circumstances federal laws that say if you have a white person and a black person and they're equally qualified for the promotion, and they're equally good employees, they have an equal amount of time, like all other things being equal, if you choose the white person, you're discriminating against the black person, and it's presumed you got to end up proving that you're not. So there's a bit of history there that makes it difficult. Similarly with any other protected class, a man and a woman, gay or straight, regular, like middle age, I guess is what I'm trying to think of. Middle age employee versus somebody who's about to retire, or young employee versus old employee. That's another one, because age discrimination is another issue. I'm not surprised that this happened in Ohio, because honestly, the bureaucracy in Ohio has been like that for a long time. If there's ever been a federal requirement that creates affirmative action as a mandate in a system, they won't drop it. even if a mandate comes along and says, well, you can't have affirmative action here anymore, they won't drop it. Ohio was sort of the underlying basis for, my description of the bureaucratic mind virus in an old episode of HBR Talk, when we introduced the bureaucratic mind virus, which is really a description of the woke mind virus, but with an explanation as to how people think from the how the normie thinks from the perspective of a bureaucrat or having dealt with a bureaucracy. And yeah, sadly, I don't think this will be the end of that form of discrimination here. I hope that she's able to go on and prove her case, because I think this hearing was just over whether or not she had to go over that hurdle of proving that her employer had a pattern of this kind of discrimination. But I hope she is able to go forward and prove her case, and they do consider it discrimination when it happens to her, and they don't come back and say, well, actually, affirmative action protects them. They have to do it this way, or they had to do it this way, and so it wasn't a violation of your rights, or they're not responsible for it. I hope that it comes back and she ends up getting a settlement of some sort, or a court award, because that will probably go farther to discourage affirmative action style discrimination than any mandate that any government authority can put into place. If companies and lower government agencies and lower government authorities know that they can get sued and they can get targeted with lawsuits and have to deal with this in court and have to pay the cost of fighting it, and maybe have to pay an award if it's proved that they did discriminate, they're less likely to ignore mandates that they abandon DEA or DEI.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see them abandon DEA as well, though, because I don't think that actually does any good in the long run in any kind of war on drugs. But DEI, abandoning the mandate to discriminate based on somebody being more deserving if they're in a minority class, like that needs to happen.
Yeah. All right. Mike, did you want to say anything? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's woman versus gay.
Yeah.
It's two different protected classes bickering over who gets the specialist treatment. The woman goes, I'm oppressed by men because I'm attracted to them. The gay man goes, I'm even more oppressed by men.
No, it was a lesbian. It's woman versus gay woman.
Oh.
And then the woman lost her job to a gay man, like her lower job.
And then the lesbian goes, I'm even more oppressed because I'm not attracted to and evidently the Supreme Court responded, the straight woman has a point. Imagine being discriminated against by the people to whom you're attracted. And then a straight man puts his hand up and goes, can I say something? I'm attracted to women, so can I deal with these divorce proceedings on that proviso? No! Silence, scum! The women are talking. All right, doesn't that count as discrimination? Formerly known as reverse discrimination? No! That's still reverse discrimination, which is just reparations for discrimination. Okay. I'm sorry. But yeah, it may seem like a breakthrough that some judicial body has broken out of the bubble and noticed that reverse discrimination, much like reverse racism, is just a piece of Gnostic wordplay that purports to have declared that discrimination is a one-way street. It doesn't mean it's realized across all planes. They're still going to refuse to recognize anti-white racism as racism, and they're still going to refuse to recognize anti-male sexism as sexism. They're just about ready to let women fight amongst themselves as to who is the ultimate victim of men, but they're not going to break out of the paradigm that men oppress women anytime soon. So yeah, this is a distraction, just like all the other distractions. The gay shit, the race shit, the trans shit, the immigrant shit. These are all distractions from the head vampire of men oppress women. As long as that shit is still going on, the rest of it is going to continue. And I know this is something I keep saying, and I know it's something I would say, but there's a reason I've been saying it for like 12 years, because it's been an issue for like 112 years. There's a reason the people pushed back against feminism long before they pushed back against all the other shit, because the feminism came first. Everything else has been hung on it like a series of colorful baubles on a Christmas tree. Get with it, folks. Communism buried itself as deep as it could into the human psyche, and the deepest place it found was the mysterious psychological difference between men and women, into women's nature to think of themselves as victims, and into men's nature to think of themselves as saviors of women's victimhood. It's no wonder it worked so well. And it's no wonder it's proving so difficult to undo that disease that buried itself so deep into the human psyche. But that's why we're here at Honey Badger Radio. That's why we dig so deep. And that's why the immune system of the communist empire has worked so hard to bury us under the algorithm. We ask not that you make us famous. We ask only that you listen to us and bring our arguments to the surface. And as far as we know, you're already doing that. For that, we thank you, and we appreciate whatever thanks you might give us, even silently, as you appropriate these arguments as your own. That's fine. Just help us undo this fuckery. The fate of mankind depends on it, and yes, womankind too. Let's hang on. I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, forgone all customs of exercise, and indeed it goes so heavily with my disposition that this goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile promontory, this most excellent canopy, the air. Look you, this brave o'erhanging firmament, this majestic roof fretted with golden fire. Why, it appeareth no other thing to me than a foul and pestilent congregation of vapours. What a piece of work is a man! How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable in action, how like an angel in apprehension, how like a god. Beauty of the world, paragon of animals, and yet to me what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me. No, nor women neither. Nor women neither.
All right, well, with that, we're going to head into the patron show, I think.
I just want to point one thing out. You look at the stories that we had today, right? We had 2 stories of violence that is a result of histories of violence in different areas, and the exploitation of men as instruments of violence, or boys. One of them was a boy, right? One story of a man not being allowed to talk, and then one story where a woman wins the victim contest. Just saying.
Yeah. Good noticing, good pattern recognition, Hannah. Thank you. So, yeah, with that, we're going to go into
the autists are for.
That's right. That's all you guys are good for. No, kidding. But now we're going to go into the patron show to take a look at this article from The Guardian that will let us remind everybody that living in Los Angeles in 2025 is going to be a test of your empathy. So you're going to stay there, you're going to watch everything burn down around you, and you're going to be empathetic, because people will like you more if you put up with more suffering while also reminding people that you're doing that for them. So anyway, if you want to join us for that, you have to become a member by going to feedthebadger.com/subscribe. $5 a month will get you into the Discord where you'll be able to watch all the additional content. And if you give it higher levels, you'll be able to participate in the conversation itself. So please consider doing that. And once again, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. We're going to head out now to the patron show. So if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today, and please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.